everyone says, oh, he just imitates the old-fashioned romantic Russian composers. And it's interesting that it hurt him so much, this reaction. If you look at the Groves Dictionary, 4th edition, it calls him a second-rate composer and gives him a, paragraph. It's a famous entry. Oh, he works a little on the arpeggio principle, and he makes these nice little, drenched melodies. It hurt him deeply. Other things hurt him, like Stalin banning his music, even though it was extremely accessible, because he put his name to a New York Times list of people that hated what was happening in the Soviet Union. It killed him not to be able to be played in his homeland, let alone knowing that he could never go back to it, never did, and was never happy away from it. Not happy away from Russia so much, or the politics is which he left for, but away from the estate. This wonderful place that he had lived in since about 1906, and then bought Ivanovka, bought from his father-in-law after his first American tour. And he wanted, he wanted to make certain it was his, not that he was living with his father-in-law's, what do you call it? He was absolutely unable to compose, really, in a certain way, away from the Soviet Union. And it was interesting that this piece, written in 1931 or so, is written basically in Senar, the place that he finally bought in Switzerland, which would remind him of Ivanovka. And he did indeed compose almost all of it. The 18th variation is an inversion of the theme, and there you get the famous, give them the little, they'll hear it. No, yeah. It's just an inversion of the main theme. Yes, he said to Horowitz about this variation, he said, yes, I composed that one for my manager so he could sell it, But the point is that it's only 21 minutes. Its variations are so tight. To me, it's more masterful than the other concertos, and I love them deeply. But this thing now, he is moving into new areas, and never before did he write, because he was a good variationist. His Chopin variations, his Corelli variations, which just came before that. But here now we really see how he emerges the Dies Irae, death theme, which is all through his works, and his extraordinary pianism. It's focus every minute, isn't it? Yeah. You could actually, in a concerto, you could say, oh my God, it will play itself for a minute. Not here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the variations move within a logic that makes it, along with the Totentanz Liszt, the greatest set of variations ever composed for piano and orchestra. And there are many more than you think, and including Franck's. And notice before the wonderful theme that we all love, the 18th variation, how he builds up to it. It's so inevitable when it comes, because the variation before is very plain. It's almost like a plain chant. It's very simple, yet you know it's going to happen. Something is going to happen in the 18th variation. Now, actually, let's say as a piano teacher, I would say it's after that variation that separates the men from the boys or the girls from the women, because from there on in, just as Rachmaninoff was, it became more and more demanding. It needs more and more strength. There's not many great performances of it, actually. In public, I hear it banged away so many times I could die. But I will give you, from my book, and you know, of course, it's based on the 24th Caprice. Massin, the great choreographer, actually did a ballet based on Paganini. Did you know that? And Rachmaninoff approved of it very much. He was not against this piece. I think he understood its balletic possibilities. It didn't survive in the repertory of any ballet company, but it probably is very interesting to see. The performances, I think, that are really wonderful are listed in my book, which you should all have if you take this class. It's called The Art of the Piano. You can get it on Amazon.com or through Amadeus Press. Clyburn is extremely good. A little slow. Davidovich, the Russian pianist, is excellent. Fleischer is quite sizzling at times. Grafman is extremely good. It's a facsimile of true romantic playing, both Fleischer and Grafman. Not really hot in the temperament. Then we have the greatest performance of all is Capel, and that's with Reiner, the greatest conductor of all that we have here, except George Sell. Then we have Panario, very, very good brittle pianist of the American school, the Kruk-Cut school of Grafman, Fleischer, and Panario. I call them the Kruk-Cut American school. They're not really romantics, they really don't understand it, but they got good training from Russian teachers. Horowitz, teaching Fleischer, and so forth. Rachmaninoff himself, the absolute, along with Capel, greatest performance, and that's with Stokowski. And then you have a very good one with Rubinstein, Reiner, and Cyril Smith and Sargent. Cyril Smith was a British pianist of great renown who played this very well. He was the one who wrote that Rachmaninoff's greatness was so vast in its charismatic quality that he would sit down at the piano and scan the audience, you know, this 6.5-foot scowl, as Stravinsky called him. And he would look over the audience and they would cower, he said. Like, you know, this incredible creature was looking at him. Of course, he's not looking at anyone. He was just looking at the hall. And he wasn't interested in beautiful women at all. His immense sexuality dies down in the 1930s. And that eroticism is no longer there. It is now, as I say here, in these last compositions, the symphonic dances, the Rhapsody, the Corelli, and the great Third Symphony, of which if you want a recording, that we have to just hear his compared to anyone else's, Krevin's or anyone else's, to see how silly they are as conductors compared to how great he was. Mettner said that he ranked with Nickisch and Mahler as the greatest conductor of the age. Anyway, so as I say, as a composer, he had felt far from the mainstream of current musical thought, and critics of his day thought him an anachronism. But with the Corelli variations, one may say Rachmaninoff entered a new period in his work. In these last compositions, he remains true to himself, but there is a paring down of excess, both in his emotionalism and the density of the music. The sobbing and often indulgent Slavic melancholy is drastically diminished. The Corelli variations and the Rhapsody are of considerable difficulty, but in both the structure and the ideas have a new transparency as well as a more urbane harmonic language. That's exactly true. He's not writing this sexy stuff anymore. He is trying to consolidate a technique which was unconsciously growing. Because 14 years he did not compose a major work except the minor fourth piano concerto, which is really better than people think, but it will never compare with the others. And so that is it. His last orchestral appearance in Chicago with, in 1943, 3 months before his death, was with the Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, which is what he played in the last 3-4 seasons of his life, all over, for he was the great, you know, what do you call it, card billing, what is it called? What would you say, you know, everyone wanted to hear him, the billing of the great...
marquee name, big marquee name.
A big marquee name, I wouldn't use that, but that, you know, and no one got more people into a concert than Rachmaninoff at that time, except, let's say, if Paderewski played, or Hoffman, and Horowitz. He would play this, and he would play the Beethoven first concerto, and that he did on the last day. He was very ill, and then he took the train during the war. Remember, took the train and went to Knoxville, Tennessee. Come in, Monet. And in Knoxville, he played the last recital of his life, which was a Bach A minor English suite, the Papillon of Schumann, the B-flat minor sonata of Chopin, the funeral march. He was playing his own funeral march, for he would be dead within 6 weeks. He went to his home. He had, you know, wanted a warmer climate, so he went to Beverly Hills. And you know, on 89th or whatever, there's the plaque.
84th maybe, something like that, like around 84.
Yeah, 505 West End, there's a plaque where he lived in, you know, actually a modest apartment. I've actually been in the one below when they were filming something there for, and you know, it was a modest apartment. He had plenty of money. Sinar cost him a fortune to build. He was very, very business. If I have to live in America, I have to make certain that every year my fee goes up. And he had a manager who had 2 people who also published his music, and his name was Foley, Charles Foley. And Foley, his other client was no less than the most beloved violinist of the age, Fritz Kreisler. And that's why they collaborated in the greatest single duo performance of all time of any sonata, and that's the Grieg Sonata. I don't mean the greatest music, but I'm saying the greatest performance I've ever heard or can imagine of that piece. So the Rock is a man who can laugh in heaven today, for if the critics said no, 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 the audience had always said yes, yes, yes. But today, when all of those composers are all forgotten, no matter who they are, from Schoenberg to you name them, this is the most performed composer of 1910, let's say, to 1940. Nothing can compare with him. Is this fair or not? I can go into that very deeply some other time, but the fact is that whatever he is, he touches so deeply the human spirit. And this is why he continues. He never is, let's say, like Borkevich, too excessive. He's never too modern, meaning people don't really like, unfortunately, modern music. Schoenberg himself said, "I fear my music is too ugly." And that was after he heard a performance of the Greek concerto in the Hollywood Bowl. So you see, I mean, romantic music gets to everyone, just no matter who they are. conducted wonderfully, wrote great music, but oh, Bernstein, omnibus. See, he taught us something about music. And that's one of the little things I try to do. Yeah, music is a very, very difficult art to remember, but words sometimes can help. And I don't mean in the sense of programmatic music, I hate that. The idea of description in music, no, that's not true. That doesn't exist in abstract music. Nonverbal music goes only into the unconscious and works magic there. I'm talking about the career of the concert pianist must in the future have people that are going to be able to talk about themselves, to be on film, to say important things that will get people inspired. Just the playing, which of course is certainly enough if you're hearing a record at home, but not if you're going to go to a Houston, because there will be a radio station there that will say, and I'm not trying to embarrass you about your talking, you're a wonderful talker. I'm just trying to say that too few people today are able to express anything in words. I'm writing a book now called Through the Years, and it's a very sarcastic preface where I say, I literally do not know anyone that knows anything. And nobody today knows anything. I start this, of course, with the fact that nobody knows a thing, and of course, there are millions of people that know many things more than I do, but I wish I knew them. When I go to dinner, and I'm of course invited everywhere, from the White House to the whorehouse. Everyone says nothing. Nothing.
Give me more food.
And you know, yeah, it's more than true. I'm being, of course, tongue-in-cheek. I go out with people, and I tell you the truth, I'm so tired afterwards because they have nothing to tell me. They have nothing that they know. I could tell most people the most blatant lies, and they will not know. And that's because there's no history at all left. Kids today, if you ask them when was Napoleon born, do you think they would say 1769? They wouldn't even know what century Hitler is in. It's an unbelievable planned amnesia in the world of academe, because academe does not teach anything. And you have to learn how to use your memory. In all my classes now, I have one rule at the beginning of the class. What did we say last week about Schoenberg? And let's take 20 minutes until we get that right, because one time is not enough. You don't read a book one time. I'm so sorry. If you think of it as entertainment, that's nice. But I just read a Philip Roth book for the third time, and now I'm starting to see what a great contrapuntist he is. Appreciation doesn't come with one time. Read the page twice, and you'll be able to memorize it. And how effective that all is in conversation. Because wherever I am, I can say thousands of things because I know thousands of things. Would you like to talk about Picasso? I know more about Picasso than I even know about Stravinsky. Would you like to talk about Thomas Edison? Well, he's very fresh in my mind because I just read 2 biographies of him. Well, that's great, but I want to know people that can tell me something. So yes, indeed, there are people that know much more than me, but we're so isolated today with our internet, with our, what do you call it, our machines, that we're never out. We don't know anyone. Nobody is in this class making it a 2 or 3 or 500 people. So they're home on the internet. And don't tell me that there's so much great stuff on YouTube, because you can't even find it. You waste hours and hours trying to find it. You say, you know, you're on YouTube all the time. You're on YouTube. You have this. I've never seen it. What would I care about seeing something I've already done? Impossible. I'm not interested. I want to only live in the action of the moment. And I want people to amuse me. maybe once every year, someone in my classes say something funny. I didn't know that we are living in a world totally serious. There is, by the way, a man, who is the great Southern writer, that writer? Huh? No, he's alive, he's alive. Anyway, I saw him on an interview recently and he said, well, my works are also to entertain. He said, one of the most important things in the world if you're born a human is to be able to entertain your fellow humans. So the point is go home, get a Byron poem, start memorizing it, and walk on the street with it. As George Steiner said, we're absolutely poverty-stricken. We have no inner stock of anything. The only people, and how I admire them, that actually memorize anything are the pianists. These people have the most difficult chore in the world. There is nothing harder to do than play the piano. And they're the only ones asked to memorize. Everyone else is allowed to. I hate to see anyone play with the score. Music is a romantic concept, and you don't want people turning pages or have a page turner or any of this stuff. What you want is to have music flow out and have no obstruction. But to do that, and remember, as I maybe said to you or not, the great conductor von Bülow in the 19th century had his Meiningen orchestra play all their work standing up and from memory. Well, today, what union would allow that? But worse than that, what union would allow you to go 1 minute over lunchtime and kill Bernstein? I'm trying to make them do a crescendo. Have you gone to any of these symphonic concerts and heard an actual crescendo? It's just beats. But pianists at least have inflections. So I am today relieving you of any talk, and you're going to sit and play the piano, first the Scarlatti, and then this treacherous variations from the second sonata by Szymanowski. Everyone has to know dates. Well, if you miss one date, he's born in 1882, he dies in what, 37 or 38?
37.
Yes. TB, just like Chopin, it's very fashionable for Polish people to die of. Try to entertain. Second movement from his second sonata by his compatriot Karl Szymanowski. Szymanowski is one of these Cinderella composers, finally making it. He's difficult, and yet don't think of him as a modernist exactly, although he can be dissonant, he can be difficult, he piles notes upon notes, of course, but he is a late romantic. Dies in 1937, I believe, and he's born in 1882. So he's of the generation of Ernest Bloch, of Stravinsky, of Mettner, of these late romantics. The only one that actually in all ways, Bartók also, went past that late romantic style is Bartók and Stravinsky. These same years, it produced an amazing flow of composers. Granados, Reger, Scriabin, Debussy, Ravel. There's never been, in the history of the 300 years, anything to compare with that decade and 3 years. Ravel's trio, written in 1913, is the last great work of that tremendous type of pianism. I call it the last working civilization. I do not really believe that we have gone anywhere. So that was the end, I'm afraid. Oh, thousands and millions of pieces written, but nothing is in the repertoire. Do you know that not one piece is in the permanent repertoire of the concerto literature since the Bartók Third? And it hardly gets, that many performances. Music went under. Rachmaninoff, as I said before, he's the guy that everyone still plays. But they were telling everyone, oh, he's no good. Well, of course, he was very good. And Szymanowski has this problem. He dies at the wrong time. He could have actually done well if he died absolutely the minute he composed his mazurkas, the 50 mazurkas, the 20 mazurkas, opus 50. And that was his assimilation of the third style, the Polish folk music of the Tatra Mountains. Not like Chopin's, but a great contribution to something we never heard before. But he lived on too long. There was, even that 17 years, it was just too difficult. He had to contend with the big German composers, Schoenberg, the big Russian, Stravinsky, the Berg, and the coming on of Webern, and all of the classical types like Walton in England and so forth. There was very little for him because he's too esoteric. He's the caviar of the piano literature. If this was played 25 years ago, you would have walked out saying, oh, is this awful? To me, it's a miscalculated orchestral work because he still has the influence of that most note-heavy composer of that period, which is Reger. And you started to hear the fugue, at the end, there is a Regerish fugue. The point is the opening of this is beginning to loosen up into his voluptuous period that would follow 1911. And through the war, he wrote amazing pieces like the Metopes and the, all based on, always he's eclectic, he always studies. He studies. When Debussy comes along, he assimilates him. And he's not imitating, he assimilates. When Scriabin in the beginning, the Opus 1 preludes are all Scriabinic. You wouldn't almost know who it is. Then you have the very voluptuous Metopes and Masque. And they're the most beautiful period for me, the one that includes the great Violin Concerto No. 1, a work that you all must hear. It's so luminous, you would die of it. It starts with such a ghost-like thing. But the main thing is that because he has so much going on, from the thick Regerish to the amorphous Debussy, he just is hard to categorize. So it's been a long, hard road, and Oscar is, of course, helping that road. I would say that I gave 5 Szymanowski concerts at the Kosciuszko, and I was once again amazed at how well they came off.